Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Is that better? Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Good evening. I'm Whitney Shields, Sister Whitney Shields. I'm a parishioner here at Bellarmine Chapel. I'm a member of the planning team also for the Embracing God's Creation series, which is a collaborative effort by all the Jesuit works in Cincinnati. So they include Bellarmine Chapel, St. Xavier Parish, Xavier University's Institute for Spirituality and Social Justice, St. Xavier High School, the Jesuit Spiritual Center in Milford, and the newly formed Xavier Jesuit Academy. So the Embracing God's Creation series is grounded in both Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si on care for our common home and the Global Society of Jesus's 2019 Universal Apostolic Preference number 4, caring for our common home. Our hope is that by exploring the ecological spirituality of Laudato Si together as a Jesuit family, we can foster not only individual and institutional transformation, but also wider transformation in our church. So thank you all for coming to the fourth presentation in this series. Tonight we'll be hearing from Sister Leanne Jablonski about knowing and loving our ecological place. So as always, we thought it would be appropriate to begin with Pope Francis's prayer for our earth. So we pray. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. We thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen. This evening, Sister Leanne will share with us for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to break into small discussion groups to reflect upon what we've heard and about how it impacts us. And then we're going to return to the large group at the end for some final sharing and Q&A with Sister Leanne. For those who are watching on the live stream and previously RSVP'd, you should have received a Zoom link via email. When we go into discussion groups, we invite you to log into the Zoom link for a small discussion group. If you didn't receive the link, it's also available beneath the YouTube video in the live stream description. The slides for tonight are also there in case you have trouble seeing them on your screen. So with that, I'm honored to introduce Sister Leanne Jablonski, a Marianist sister, a climate change plant ecologist, educator, and pastoral minister. Sister Leanne is a native of Winnipeg, Canada, where she first met the Marianist and Jesuit families and fell in love with God and the outdoors. She earned a BSc in plant ecology from the University of Manitoba, and after entering the Marianist Sisters, she earned an MS in plant physiology and an MA in pastoral ministries from the University of Dayton. She also completed doctoral research in plant physiological ecology and climate change at McGill University in Montreal and earned a certificate in spiritual direction from the Hayden Institute. Sister Leanne has led environmental justice and climate change education and advocacy initiatives with science and faith-based organizations at local, state, and national levels. She co-founded the Environmental Justice section of the Ecological Society of America and worked for the Ohio Council of Churches as the Ohio coordinator with the Catholic Climate Covenant and the Union of Concerned Scientists. Currently, she serves on Her Marianist Sisters U.S. leadership team and on their International Justice, Peace, and Integral Ecology Commission, and is leading Laudato Si implementation in the U.S. Marianist Family Network. Sister Leanne directs the 100-acre Marianist Environmental Education Center in Dayton, Ohio, with its mission of restoring communities of land and people. She is also on the University of Dayton faculty as Scholar for Faith and Environment at the Hanley Sustainable Institute and is co-coordinating UD's Laudato Si Action Platform. Welcome, Sister Leanne.
Well, it's really great to be with you, and I realize that I think I have experienced all the parts of your Marianist family, except for this new of your Jesuit family, except for this new academy. So look forward to seeing that. Is anybody here from there? Okay. It hasn't opened yet. Okay, so you're part of the dream, which is really important. I had fun also in preparing for this, really looking at what are Jesuits about? What are those engaged in the Jesuit family about? And I was glad to find one green logo with the IHS symbol on it. So you'll see that used throughout. And I began to look at, the situation here in Cincinnati. So this bridge has become rather symbolic recently, but it really is kind of a great symbol of the work we're trying to do. One, it's connecting Ohio with Kentucky. It's often a jam, isn't it? And a difficulty and a traffic challenge for us. And much more often, each of us are far more aware of what's going on, myself included, on the roads, the highways, the bridges, the congestions going on, than we are in being able to name the native species from our region, or the native species in that beautiful Ohio River. And this Ohio River, the Biomes rivers, the 5 rivers in the Dayton area, all meet and keep flowing south. And our UD students have actually traced that if you put contaminants in, they actually can end up all the way in the Gulf of Mexico. So what we're doing all the way along, if we go way up to Indian Lake, where our brothers have a community, in the Miami River, and that whole watershed all flowing south, has implications for us. We're all connected. It was interesting that our state seal, the state of Ohio, does show some natural elements. It does show that there's some waterways, some hills. It shows that there's agriculture going on in our state. But when you look at the flag of Cincinnati and that symbol, it's all about the progress and the industry and all that we're doing. Although perhaps those blue, the blue is the ripples of the river. We could hope that, right? And the waterways that are here. But so what I'm going to invite us today is really into a deeper knowing of our ecological place and how we can explore that. And I just want to thank you, Jesuit family, for sharing your gifts. Pope Francis and his transformative vision, the man moves me to tears so many times, and your apostolic priorities as to collaborate and care for our common home, and that real stretch of moving beyond the silos of our own institutions and own families to work with others is so key. The Ignatian spirituality and exercises have been a great gift in my life. I did a 30-day retreat at Gloucester on the ocean in winter. I'm Canadian, that was fine. The creativity that's coming out, let's develop an ecological examen. What does that look like? And finding God in all things that Ignatius called us to from his own conversion experience. And then, out of the generosity of the Jesuits, right, from the superior general level of saying, we're going to develop a university pathways network, but it's not just going to be for Jesuit institutions. We're going to have that be for all institutes of higher learning globally. And I was deeply grateful to be part of that as we were behind the scenes readying the Laudato Si Action Platform. to be released, and just seeing what we could do as universities. So that's still there, networking us from all over the world. And then the collaboration with the Archdiocese and the University of Dayton with the Laudato Si Action Platform Conference. How many are registered and coming? All right, there's still time to register. Deadline closes on Wednesday, so write down that little tiny URL, LSAP-MAR423, so the dates of it. It's free lunch, and we do have students from Xavier and St. X speaking at it, and teachers, some in this room. So thank you for being part of that, and really a great opportunity to network with what we're doing in all sectors of the diocese. Jacques-Yves Cousteau said, "People protect what they love." But to love something or someone, you must be in relationship. How many times have we heard it said or experienced myself, "Oh, I'm in love, I've fallen in love with this." And then people around say, "But you hardly know the person, and you're going to move what in this relationship and do what?" Because we know that we can't just fall in the feelings. We have to really get to know the other. And way back, it goes to Baltimore Catechism, which I just missed, said, what is our purpose? What is our purpose in life? To know, love, and serve God in this world and to be with God in the next, right? It carries on. But to think of those three aspects, if God has created all things, and we encounter God in ourselves and all aspects of creation, because really our bodies are made up of all the elements of all the animals and plants we've eaten, then it means to know, love, and serve our entire planet and one another in that. And serve means to act, right? When you love someone, you want to know them more. And then you want to do things for them and with them. And the same thing for that which is about us. So it's important to know that that isn't a nasty insect that you're going to spray with pesticides. That's the monarch caterpillar. It's important to know that this little guy, this muskrat here, is native here, was here long before us humans probably, and merging around. But we really have a crisis. And a crisis is a time of decision making because we have challenges and opportunities before us. So we've really lost the personal experience with the home environment. So if I asked you your 5 top animals that you could remember and that are your favorite ones, are those top 5 to more likely be something from pet stores or Cincinnati Zoo? Beautiful to care for them all, or something of our own Ohio native species. We don't go outside. Thank God for COVID, because it actually got me walking around my own backyard every day and noticing a lot more. One of the blessings of being confined. But we have urban sprawl and very full lives. The outdoors is viewed as dangerous. Once had a Girl Scout out at our Marinas Environmental Ed Center, and we were doing reflective experiences and walked our labyrinth. And she said, "Oh, I love it out here. I just love to be out and just reflecting. My mother won't let me sit outside alone." Because it's dangerous. Something might happen, right? There's some of that concept. And so Richard Louv wrote about Last Child in the Woods and the extinction of play. How many in this room as kids caught insects in jars? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you wandered off trails into the woods or the creek? Yeah. How many of you broke branches off trees and had sword fights or other things like that? How many of you, if you were leading a group of school children today, would let the kids do that? A little bit, but at we had that question asked for us at Nature Center administrators meetings, and we all went, yeah, we say stay on the trail, do this and that. But we need these free places of play. So now we're trying to create these spaces, not where the pristine rare and endangered species are, but areas that it's okay. Fence them off, no adults allowed, let the kids just play, right? So we need to do that. And those memories of doing that with adults stays with us. And the research shows we're more likely to be responsible environmental voters in the future if we've had those experiences as kids. So all of you, think about the kids in your lives that you can help do that with. We're in a consumptive society. Do it now. What's the quickest, efficient way versus sustainability? There's a big individualism and we've, a lack of connection, and so we don't really claim the social sin we're all part of, or the sin of omission of not getting engaged to do social change. So to be thinking about that as we enter into this Lenten season of change and transformation and springtime, yes, it's coming. And that alienation from nature is even being called by eco-psychologists now nature deficit disorder, losing those. And so a lot of people are doing therapy by being in their gardens and doing that. And Pope Francis talks about this. If we get alienated from nature, we'll be alienated from other people and ultimately God. We're connected. In this talk, in the spirit of Francis, our goal is not to amass information or satisfy curiosity, but to become painfully aware, to dare to turn what is happening to the world into our own personal suffering and thus discover what we each can do about it. He calls us to hear that joint cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, and says that Mother Earth is the poorest of the poor. So the Laudato Si action platform was birthed 5 years after Laudato Si was released, delayed a bit by COVID, but it's really calling us to this 7-year process of 1 year of planning, 5 years of living out our plans, evaluating every year, and then the 7th year of Sabbath, rest and celebrate a bit. So that to take us to that 2030, which is a very key potential tipping point, which I'll talk about today. There are 7 Laudato Si goals. 7's a big sacred number, as we know, and 7 sectors. So Jesuit family, it's fantastic because we've got the religious congregations which cross all of these individuals and families, our educational institutions, parishes, dioceses, hospitals, healthcare, businesses, NGO, nonprofits, lay movements, and organizations. It's everybody. And everybody's working in their own way with ways that make sense, developing their own plans and working collaboratively to do that, and then really see what we can do together and learn from each other. So it was released, and I found it very inspiring, poetic, transforming, challenging. I had a copy of it that I saw at midnight before, as it was released in the Vatican City before their 9 a.m. conference. I read it through, and I just couldn't get through it. Why? I was crying. I couldn't read because I was crying, because finally somebody was speaking to me as a scientist in the ways we do science. So it was really wonderful in its inclusivity. Scientists were obviously consulted from the Vatican Academy. And as an ecologist, it's the inclusive science. So the word ecology comes from the Greek word oikos, the same word that is used in the Christian scriptures when we're talking about the house churches, oikumena. And so ecology means that, so care for our common home in the name of the encyclical is really talking about those relationships. So what do we do as ecologists? We need to know all the other sciences and math too, but we're studying the relationships of organisms and their environment. So organisms with other living organisms, and organisms, what we say the abiotic things, the rocks, the water without creatures in it, all of it, and how we respond. And in fact, in the encyclical, ecology is used 33 times, ecosystem, so a forest is an ecosystem, a river is an ecosystem, is used 26 times, and diversity 14. Definitions are woven in without science jargon. You won't find the word sustainability in the encyclical, which is interesting. I think they deliberately avoided some words that could have a turnoff to some people. But scientific process is there. And what's emphasized matches the concerns of the science community. So just to say, the key issues of Laudato Si are also taught for ecologists. So water, biodiversity, climate change, pollution, energy, food, and environmental impacts. And the related issues, the new ecology of human interaction. So we talk about human ecology, urban ecology, agroecology, environmental justice, the disproportional impacts on those who are vulnerable. And Pope Francis uses the word integral ecology to talk about the social sciences, the people, the environmental components of the ecological, and then us working together to find those solutions. And considering the economics in that as well. Okay, I've given you an overview of some of the ways we're going to walk this night, but I just invite us now to move into our own memories and spaces. Francis says the history of our friendship with God is always linked to particular places, which take on an intensely personal meaning. We all remember places, and revisiting those memories does us much good. Anyone who has grown up in the hills or used to sit by the spring to drink or played outdoors in the neighborhood, going back to these places is a chance to recover something of their true selves. I want you to journey in your mind back to some of the places and memories for you that were special. And in the book of Job, on one of his better days, he wrote, "But ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds of the air, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, or let the fish of the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of God has done this? In God's hand is the life of every creature, and the breath of all humankind." It's okay to talk to the animals, the birds, and listen to them. So I love this picture that was sent to me of Girl Scouts, that best friends at age 10 that love to walk on our trails and put themselves in the hollow tree. And here they are. They all went off to different colleges and came back. You can tell it's their first break. The leaves are turning. And what do? They put themselves in the same position again 8 years later. They don't quite fit the same way, but it was important for them to do that. They remembered that picture, they remembered the memories, and they did that. Isn't it important to have those special places of memory that for them it was each other sharing that? What are your special memories? Your places of encounter, of knowing, and of loving? So I just invite you to recall memories of restorative places and times in nature and their part in your friendship with God and your recovery of your true self. How many of you are thinking of water? How many of you are thinking of woods or a tree? How many of you are thinking of rocks somewhere? Earth? Anybody thinking of fires, fireplaces, campfires? Animals? Plants? Okay, so we got a good diversity of that. Anybody on a mountain looking out? We're too far from the mountain, huh? Okay. So living an ecological spirituality is really calling us to encounter creation and draw from that. Our saints talked about opening the book of nature. We have the scripture, the holy scriptures of the Bibles, we have writings of the saints, and even our evangelical friends created a whole retreat series called Opening the Book of Nature, that third book of God. Ignatius describes that experience, the great river, where he saw that he could find God in all things. Our own Mariana sister foundress, when she was 16, wrote this: in this season, as he went from Lent to Easter, everything should help us raise our hearts to God and provide us topics for reflection. The plants, the trees, everything is reborn. Should we alone be unchanged? So if all the rest of nature is going through this cycle right now, as we approach the Lenten season and move to Easter, it's really that time to let new things sprout, let new things emerge, try something different. That's what we're called to do. And I am going to give you some graphs tonight. I'm a scientist, I've got to give you a few. But if you get overwhelmed, just join with Addie. When Addie became tired of staring at the emptiness, of trying to find something, anything on the horizon, she grew up on the prairie, she dropped to her knees and let the tall grass with its sweet, dry smell swallow her up. So think about those times you laid on your back looking up, or those times you just rolled around. It wasn't helpful to have the experience of rolling around in Winnipeg when I went to Texas and got chiggers in the grass, but you have to learn your ecosystems. But yes. And what's part of that ecological spirituality? We're part of this sacred interconnected home place, a web. So we have sacred places in nature. We've got our childhood memories. Where did Jesus spend most of his time? In buildings like this? Nope. Outdoors guy, right? Think of all the parables. Think of all the images that he used. He was most often outside with people. And the Psalms are rich, rich in nature images. And think about our church's sacramental life. How will we celebrate baptism if we can't be assured of clean water? As we take the sacred hosts and the wine, are we recalling those who grew the grasses, the wheat, those who worked the vineyards, and thinking about the dignity of the farm workers who were working on those? Perhaps the reconciliation we're called to, as there was public sackcloth and ashes in some former times of reconciliation, is to really do some land restoration or cleanup or engage in some of those more difficult tasks to restore what was in our own relationships. Oh, and just think of all of the symbols that are in celebrating the sacrament of confirmation. So God comes in the form of a bird, right? The Holy Spirit is a dove. We've got that. We have the Spirit as breath and wind. We've got the Spirit as fire. And so that ongoing listening and how rich it is. There is a new guidebook that I just realized was there this week when the Laudato Si movement has a monthly seminar that over 1,000 people were on, and those are all available on their webinar. Probably easiest to find, it's on the Vatican website, so if you Google Our Common Home, but the URL is really long, but if you go to the Stockholm Environmental Institute, they did it in partnership, and it's wonderful and has all kinds of great practical ideas for impactful choices that have impact regarding water, air, land, energy, food, future. So you get just a couple of really solid ideas in that. It's beautiful, about 16 pages, color, so check that one out. So let's think about our home here in North America. So we have biomes. These are distinctive vegetation types that are determined by precipitation and temperature. So here we are in Ohio, and we're just at the transition of the grasslands, savanna region, great prairies here, into the forests. The eastern temperate deciduous forests. And that's really, and if you go further north, this is green, but what kind of forest is it? It's that boreal forest, it's coniferous trees. And, you know, though the temperature's warming and things are going to be able to grow further north, there is no way that what we know here in this region, that soybeans are going to be able to grow on acidic coniferous soil. It just can't happen, even though the plants may be able to migrate, because that's been here a lot longer. So let's see what else we've got here. So our bedrock in Ohio, so let's go, here we are in Cincinnati, so you're in the Ordovician, the marine life was here, sedimentary life, it's about 500 to 438 million years old as that bedrock that's there, that limestone and shale. And you can just see the diversity of what we've got in Ohio, actually, of the geology. And then the soil regions, I'm not going to go over all of those, but they kind of approximately, of course, are going to follow the bedrock underneath, because soil is made from that, kind of as it breaks up and comes from that, and the mineral types that are there. So this is just really determines a lot of what's going to happen and grow. And just look at that diversity. And kind of in some ways I say, well, it's no wonder that Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, I say the three big C's, each kind of function rather independently and don't kind of own this, we're all part of Ohio, because kind of bioregionally, it's a very different type of region, from a lake to a river system and woods to, you know, in the heart of the grasslands and rivers. But it is important that we unite to tell our elected officials what's important to us for the care of our common home in Ohio. Here's the original vegetation of Ohio, too. So if you see down in Cincinnati, you've got quite a bit of diversity around here. The beech forest, mixed oaks, sugar maples, elm ash swamp, and the mixed mesophytic forest, and that bottom land hardwood forest close to the river. So a lot of diversity right in this region, which is wonderful. And of course, the kind of plants that are there are going to determine the animals, the insects that go. And woods are just wonderful to wander through in all seasons of the year. Especially woods like ours, where we've taken out a lot of the invasive honeysuckle shrubs and all, so you can really see the understory and what's happening. And coming up soon are all of these woodland fen and meadow delights. The skunk cabbage has already come up, melted the snow. It's not black and white, so you can guess where it's getting its name from. That smell is really going to attract some of its fly pollinators. We've got the trillium, fringed gentian, the impatiens plants. So just wonderful plants to experience soon. And our call is to really become one with nature and complement what's already happening naturally. Sometimes we get rid of the invasive species in our yard, just let things go, stop mowing, and you'd be surprised what comes back. So the downy yellow violet will be coming, and then the wild red black raspberries, the false rue anemone. I'm not giving this to you in order, you know that. The toadshade, the trillium that's sessile, the twin leaf, and the beautiful flowering dogwood because of little reds on it and the four shape, which is often has imagery related to Jesus' cross and the Easter season. So now let's move to our common home, thinking about it globally. So the universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old, is the best we can estimate. The Earth only been here 4.5 billion years of that. Now think about humans. We're the last species to arrive. We've only been here 0.01% of all time. So if you put the rest of evolution on a clock, what minute do we arrive? Last minute before midnight. So we're really the new kid on the block, yet we behave like we're the big ones in charge of everything. We're part of the smallest group taxonomically, the mammals, and we know that traits that are maladaptive to the environment do not survive or pass on. So all the rest of creation can survive without us. Except the things in our own guts and whatever, I suppose. But we cannot survive without all of them. So that's the other fact. In terms of abundance, Sheldrake, a famous British man, once said, God must have had an inordinate fondness for beetles because he created so many of them. That's one of the biggest groups. So we're really called to live within limits. The earth is finite. Literally, when we say there's nothing new under the sun, we mean it. There's nothing new coming to us. We're just recycling it. Matter is changing forms. And there's mixing. There's no boundaries on the gases of carbon dioxide and all. So I just invite you to stand. If you're able, just stand for a moment. Take a deep breath. What is your body really enjoying as you're breathing in? What does your body need from the air you're breathing in? Oxygen, right? Okay. Breathe out. And what's coming out as the net product that you're breathing out? Carbon dioxide. What's going to take up that carbon dioxide? All the plants, right? That's what they take in for photosynthesis, convert that to sugars, starches, all of that. They hold it, they sequester it, or move it into the soil. So, okay, so take a breath in again. And know that by the mixing of all the air in the world, that you are breathing in some of the air, some of the molecules of our very first parents and everybody who's ever lived before us. Your ancestors, wonderful saints, St. Ignatius, and some people you probably don't want to be associated with, but that's all in the air. As you breathe out this time, breathe out very conscious. Using argon tracers, scientists have determined that in the air we breathe out in this room tonight, every child born on the planet this year will experience it at some time during their life. That's the mixing of the air. It joins us in time and in space. So the deep act of breathing and often silent prayer really does unite us. You may be seated. So here we go, and what's happening with this global carbon? Well, we've been burning fossil fuels. Since 1750, the level was 280 parts per million, and it's increased exactly by 50%. So today, I checked there, you can check the carbon dioxide levels every day, it's 420 parts per million. When I was doing my PhD studying elevated carbon dioxide impacts on plants, the ambient in the room was 350 parts per million. That's the mid-90s. So just even how much it's going. And so we can really see the trajectory we were on in following carbon dioxide. And actually, when this slide first came out and I started using it for talks, that's where it was. This arrow I keep moving every time I give a talk. And then carbon dioxide and other heat-trapping gases such as methane form this blanket over the Earth, causing warming. You know how the temperature's been going back and forth these days? Some days you're cold, you pull those extra blankets on you, and then all of a sudden it's warming up again. You go kick it off. That blanket just kind of holds that heat, and that's what's happening to us. That carbon dioxide, the nitrous oxide, the methane from cow flatulence and our landfills is causing that warming. We're also seeing this, the orange is the temperature, and it's showing how much, if you look at the general patterns, we look for trends as scientists, temperature tracks that over time too. We know that from analyzing ice core bubbles from the old chemistry laws, pressure volume equations. And in fact, when Bob Brecka made his slide, it was 410. We're now at 420. So here we go. We shared this, but we have not known this for 2 million years. We haven't known the levels of carbon dioxide we're seeing now. So for 2 million years, we haven't experienced it on the planet. This is just showing The carbon dioxide, the methane, the nitrous oxides, all going up. And if you're saying, well, where is it coming from? This is forestry and other land use in the orange there, or that brownish color. And then the gray is fossil fuels, cement, flaring that's done. And you can see from up to 1970, it was about half from that. But look at, if we take 1750, this is just a 2011, you can see double the amount is really coming from the fossil fuels into the atmosphere. And the warming also follows with that, kind of taking the data. And this is what we've actually observed, and then scientists have gone back to reconstruct it in time, done modeling experiments to say, well, if we took out the solar, volcanic, and other things that are natural, where would we, if we looked at all of those together, all the natural things, where would we be at? That's it. We add humans, and that's where we are, and that's what we're actually observing. And it's not happening evenly across the world. So with that warming, we're seeing increased storm intensity and frequency, more hurricanes, more cyclones, because warm air holds more moisture. And so it gets full, and then we get these intense rain events. And we're getting change in precipitation seasonality too, so we're getting more rain in the spring. Farmers are sometimes having trouble getting their crops in Ohio, and then when the crops need to mature, they're not getting the rain. Then we get this drought kind of experience. We're seeing more flooding, droughts and wildfires, and all of this exacerbates health challenges, so those who have asthma or other respiratory ailments are feeling it more. And it's resulting in more global migration and refugees without places to go. And you'll see that the places, so look at the Amazon rainforest, how much that's been, that increased temperatures. The darker colors are showing the increase. The Arctic Circle really showing that there. And as we say, as Canadians, we say, oh, wow, warmer weather, but we're not going to be able to grow the things in it. What is that going to do for maple sugar industry even? And so this just is showing, the warming and how it's happening. And with this is actual measured data on the sea level rise due to ice caps, glaciers, and water expands with warming too. So we're actually, seeing how much it's gone up and how much erosion is going on too. So we're near what's called a tipping point. And this is just showing all of these different environmental aspects we need to be concerned about. And things that are at high risk is the biogeochemical flows of nitrogen and phosphorus and our genetic diversity. And I'll talk more about why genetic diversity or biodiversity is important. And then increasing risk in yellow is the climate change and land system changes. And the planetary boundaries are these areas in which we can safely function. But if we cross them, we could generate abrupt or irreversible environmental changes. And so we're just trying to respect those boundaries and reduce the risk to human society of crossing these thresholds. That's why the urgency of reducing our carbon emissions, our global warming gas emissions by 2030, because the risk of reaching that point is grave. So we're moving towards what can we do with more fuel-efficient cars? What can we do with more solar, with wind? Pope Francis also points out the Earth, our home, is beginning to look more and more like an immense pile of filth. So we've got all this waste and pollution that's coming from all over the place. That's really causing difficulties and changing soil and water chemistry. And it has the greatest impact on those who did the least to cause it and are least likely to be able to do anything about it: the economically poor, the marginalized, the indigenous, the tribal. So it's really displacing human communities and losing on loss of cultures. And for me, one of my most transformative moments is Iumi, who I had the privilege to teach when I went to one of our sister universities, which is Chaminade University in Honolulu. It was not a difficult assignment to accept in February. But I wasn't wanting to go for the exoticness of it. I was like, oh, come on, But once I got there, I realized it's truly beautiful. Half the students in the university are Pacific Islanders. They come, they leave their home for 4 years, don't go back for any visits until they're done. Some of them live on islands that are about the size of this campus. That's small, that's their whole island. Yumi was sitting that close, and I was presenting the data we had on the Pacific Islands. This is back 20 years ago now. And she said, "Are you telling me that our island, my culture, is going to disappear? What are you going to do about it? Move us somewhere else and ship us bottled water?" Well, this really took me back because Pacific Islanders are very respectful of elders. So hopefully that was an indication I had created a safe environment in the class. But, I just was like, whoa, what am I going to do? Because she has a U.S. passport. She's in our sister Catholic university. And she's asking for help. If I can't respond to that, what? So the next class she came back and she said, "I told you because I think you can do something. That's why I said it." And I said, "Well, Yumi, we all have to do it and work together." But I tell her story every time I speak, and I still, to this day, can't tell it without crying. But there's lots of people crying. How many of you saw the movie The Letter? So this is available on YouTube. I saw it on the large screen last week. I think you were seeing it about the same time. And I just wow, those stories. And just the beauty of it. I was crying through it. And it's like I have to give myself the opportunity to turn off the technology, just sit in the theater, take it in, to move me, and maybe think more about the actions I can then take. So the other big issue we're dealing with then that relates is biodiversity. So in Ohio, we've lost a lot of native habitat and species loss. We've lost 95% of the coverage we had. They said a squirrel used to be able to hop from the Atlantic right to Ohio on trees. We've restored about 25% as of today. Prairies over 99% lost. Wetlands over 90% destroyed, and wetlands are extremely rich ecosystems. Nearly 1 out of 4 plant species are non-native, and over 300 are rare, endangered, or threatened. Pope Francis said, "Because of us, thousands of species will no longer give glory to God by their very existence, nor convey their message to us. We have no right. Because all creatures are connected, each must be cherished with love and respect." And he invites us to realize in this season of love, the entire material universe speaks of God's love and boundless affection for us. Soil, water, mountains, everything is, as it were, a caress of God. And then he encourages us, truly, much can be done, gang. You can do it. So I've talked about that integral ecology he's calling us to, and really to our ecological conversion. That's how he describes it. Ecological conversion and transformation and partnerships. So how do we turn hopes and principles into actions that make meaningful social change? Well, Erica Chenoweth, who is a professor at Harvard now, and we're proud to say she's a UD grad, she has done some top sociological research, and they found in studying the world's nonviolent campaigns, if you can get 3.5 participation at a peak time, permanent change will happen. The majority of the world's population identifies with a religion, over 84% in the world, and about 17% of these are Catholic. So Pope Francis is saying we got potential. All we need is 3.5% to change. And it's adopted. Look, we stopped smoking in Ohio. Whoever thought that would happen, right? I mean, there have been changes we've seen. We stopped using horses and went to cars because manure in the streets was too bad. There are times that we've made differences. So the UN Sustainable Development Goals were out there to reach planetary sustainability. Pope Francis, in his brilliance, said, let's look at things that make sense with the encyclical and our faith language, so these intersect with globally what the world's trying to do as Hope for the Earth and the Poor. And if you haven't been on the platform, please do go and explore it in terms of what we're doing. So tonight we're really talking about that greater contact and connections with the natural world in the spirit of wonder, praise, joy, happiness, and gratitude. Then that helps us to do the harder stuff, right? And make sure the education happens and take actions for more sustainable lifestyles and respond to the cry of the poor who need intact ecosystems for their health too. So the apostolic preference of the Society of Jesus really calls us to that collaboration because creation's yearning for liberation as never before. It's affecting the poor and vulnerable. We want to leave it in best condition, and there's still time to change. The UN Faith and Environment Program has released some great resources, so it's not just us, it's all the world's faith traditions globally. Do you know that 8% of global natural lands are under the care of faith-based groups? And so there's a real call for action in that. You've got a great Faith Communities Go Green movement here in Cincinnati, and great interfaith work going on here on common values and projects. Our Marriedness family, so if you like, some of you might want to check this out. What we decided to do, because there's so many different projects coming at us, is we've integrated the Laudato Si Action Platform, the Global Compact, and what we call our Characteristics of Marriedness Education to create Marriedness Encounters goals through all our ministries in the country. And here's just an example of Goal 1. So we are integrating them and showing people how they relate. So we promote justice, peace, and integrity of creation to better care for our common home, responding to the cry of the earth and the poor in our Marriedness ministries and communities. Sometimes people will dismiss things and say, oh, another project, another thing we're being told we have to do. But if you can show them how it integrates what we're already doing, more likely to have success, right? So feel free to explore that. And we have a social justice collaborative, and in fact, the director lives very close to Xavier, Sarah Gray, so I invite you to check her out, and glad to do collaboration between Marriedness and Jesuits. Father Chaminad's brother was a Jesuit, our founder. So he said, if there's a Society of Jesus, we'll be a Society of Mary. Our Marriedness Environmental Education Center, really, when there's bad traffic, you can get to us just as fast as to the airport. So we've got a property we invite you to explore with us and learn with us. So we act in communion with the land and educate other communities through ecology-based simple living, social justice, and spirituality. We're networking with the Nature Centers network in North America. You've got a wonderful nature center here with Cincinnati Nature Center. And we're really encouraging congregations to consider pollinator gardens. So restoration is trying to alter structure and function of disturbed and degraded ecosystems to enhance biotic integrity. And what happened with us is when Interstate 675 came in, how many have traveled Interstate 675 to bypass Dayton on your way to Columbus? Be honest, it's okay. Or Cleveland or whatever. Yeah. So what happened is it was just decided that it would pass right by this property that had been at that time almost 200 acres that the brothers owned. I remember as a novice, I could walk through. There was a frog pond in the middle of the forest that the highway was going to go right through. And I was on retreat, and I was out at night, and the spring peepers were croaking, and the bullfrogs and all, and I just started crying. That was another moment I started crying, going, and just this crazy little prayer came out of me. I said, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. If I can do something to help, I'm going to try. I had no idea. At that time, I was all indoors. Brother Don Geiger was doing this plant physiology indoor work, so that's what my master's had to be. I was punching leaf discs and analyzing the chemistry. I was an ecologist at heart, but that's what I was doing, and then teaching in the labs. So the sand and gravel was sold. Somebody didn't fully consult and sold it. They said, oh, well, will bring us some income. Not thinking that they took out a lot of the forest to do that. They took out even more than they needed to. Because, anytime a road is built, you've got to take land from somewhere else to build it, right? Change it with the elevations and all. And because the glaciers all came through that part of Ohio, there's a lot of sand and gravel. Well, Brother Don Geiger moved out on the property right after I graduated and started teaching himself ecology. And so he said, well, what are our options? We have this steep grade. You see how steep the grade is there of it, you know, the excavation? He said, what are we going to do? Plant Kentucky bluegrass over all this gravel now removed, which will require frequent mowing, or lo and behold, we're on the eastern edge of the tall grass prairie. Let's try it. It'll protect threatened plants and animals, and maybe it can be a green space for enrichment and education. So what happened is he had this vision way before we had the people, and so once the prairie established, we named it the Brother Don Geiger Prairie on the Marianus Nature Preserve, and just this year, for the first time, there was a pond that's there. Spring peepers have appeared and been sighted on the property 35 years later. It takes time sometimes. But we also really advocated for the brothers to put 62 acres in a permanent conservation easement. So we've got this area here, which has 2 miles of nature trails, the prairie, the woods we've been taking out, honeysuckle, restoring, and then we've got 82 acres of a front field. The brothers, after much deliberation, decided yes. And that's actually released more grant money for us too. And so we're restoring the wetlands, and you see the beauty of the marsh marigolds. We take out the honeysuckle. And our seeds are collected by volunteers. We have nursery stock of shrubs as well, of nearly 300 species, which we sell each year in a plant sale as a big fundraiser and make native plants from this region available to you. So you're welcome to take these catalogs. You're welcome to sign up on this list. To become part of that, or go online to do that. So a lot drive up from Cincinnati for it. And now out in the front field, we're also doing restoration. We have a big native plant nursery, so it's all on our property. Nothing's grown in greenhouses, all in natural conditions, so they're not ready till June for the sale. Yeah, and a solar panel array is going up soon that's going to power the whole property. So native plants will preserve ecosystems and biodiversity. They're going to thrive in the local climate. They don't require fertilizers. They don't require pesticides. And they attract pollinators and beneficial insects. Do you know that 90% of pollination is by animals? There's wind and a bit of transit of others. And 1 out of the 3 bites of food you eat is a result of bees. And do you know that the queen bee from our native bees is the only one who survives the winter, hibernates, buries in the leaf litter, in the royal jelly they make for her, everybody else dies. So if she has done that in leaves, that you rake up and go away, that bee population won't continue. So that's why we're saying leave the leaves, the big movement of leaving the leaves. You know, kind of rake up an area in your yard where the leaves can be left, or create these soft landings under your trees that just have some leaves and other vegetation there planted. Wasps, ants, flower beetles, flies, we're just going to enjoy the diversity. Here, think of all the stages of a monarch's life that have to be protected, so they need different kinds of plants for that. And of course, the milkweed, which makes them unpalatable to other things. We do butterfly monitoring with citizen science, and the diversity of sites in our region has helped us see 46 different species. So we have the highest diversity and abundance of sites in the region. iNaturalist.org, check it out, and open an account, because you can take a picture with your cell phone, and even if you don't know what it is, you upload it to iNaturalist, it'll give you some suggestions. You can say, I think it's this, and the community is very kind, and they'll come back and they'll say, yeah, we agree, or they'll say, no, we don't think so, try this. And so we learn. It's a great learning community. And by doing that, you can be a little citizen scientist, and then, so we can see chipmunks are really low now, they're going to start emerging, but they're at the peak in kind of in that May-June period. And we can follow populations that way just by observations people like you walking around takes. We do our restoration through hands-on mutual service and lots of volunteers helping us collect seeds, clean them in the winter, plant them, and then that's our plugs that sell for $5 at our plant sale, or what doesn't sell gets put into pots for $15 the next year. These are the great services that ecosystems do for us for free. So when the city of Beaver Creek thought they needed another mall and took out a bunch of woods to create the mall they called the so-called green and named all the streets in the mall after the trees they had taken out. Well, that's what happens. All these services were lost. So I'm just going to invite us as an appreciation for ecosystem services to just shout these out, and I'm just going to ask each section of the room, to kind of read with me to just honor it, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. You ready? Lessening of floods and droughts, soil generation and preservation, waste detoxification and decomposition, climate stability and moderate weather extremes and impacts, nutrient cycling and movement, seed dispersal, pollination, control of pests and diseases, maintenance of biodiversity, everybody on this side, air and water purification, and everybody, provide aesthetic beauty and lift the human spirit. So scientists wrote that. We're not total nerds, but acknowledging the aesthetics and the beauty of that. And we can actually calculate economically. We're wrapping up now, but just to say, you can actually take this, and the slides are available. Tim can make them available to you with the live stream in terms of just the money that's saved, equivalent to removing 150 cars from the road from the water purification. Moderating the weather extremes, taking out the carbon is worth $2,700 a year. And so by planting plants, you're reducing runoff. If we have impervious surface, it all just goes and it takes all the nasty chemicals with it straight into the rivers. But you can let the plants and natural vegetation be big filters for you. So you can plant rain gardens in your yard if you have trouble with water accumulating. We have plants that grow best in moist places, plants that are best in dry, sunny, shade, and you can choose that. Or you can learn from our catalog and buy them at another native plant supplier, but just do it. Create beautiful spaces to kind of wander through season-wise just by sculpting it a little bit, creating an artistic part to it. Our labyrinth is made of native plants with native plant lined and a mowed grass path to listen to the longing of the soul. You can establish a prairie patch and reduce the time and energy you spend mowing. Let the grass go and it'll attract beautiful things. You can create a bird and butterfly garden to protect biodiversity. There's still room to be part of our Winter Wisdom Retreat this Saturday. We're having a congregational land stewardship. We're working with congregations, faith communities that want to create native plantings, and we're doing a program on Sunday, March 26th at 3, or just email us if you're interested so we can get in contact, see if you'd like to do that. And during Native Plant Month in Ohio, starting the Saturday after Easter, we'll have 3 weeks in a row of a virtual at native plant education you can sign up for. And our native plant sale last Saturday in June. Order early. You can pick it up at the sale. Pope Francis ends by the encyclical by what I use in my signature. Let us sing as we go. May our struggles and our concern for this planet never take away the joy of our hope. And the prophet Isaiah says, you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. All the trees of the field shall clap their hands. So clap with the trees for yourselves for being here. And now we're going to break into small groups, I think. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Leanne. Given us a lot to reflect on. So we are going to break out into small discussion groups for about 10 minutes. We invite you to break off into groups of about 3 or 4. If there's people next to you that you haven't met before, please introduce yourselves. Just start giving general first impressions, and then we have some reflection questions on the sheets you should have gotten when you came in. Wherever your heart stirs you to take the conversation, I'll give us a 1-minute warning to bring us back, and then we'll end with some Q&A and final thoughts. We'll discuss for about 1 more minute if you want to wrap up your conversations. All right, if we want to come back to the large group, we've got about 15 minutes to wrap up. All right, if everyone could come back to the large group. So we have about 15 minutes left. We're going to use this time to do any sharing from your small groups, if there's any reflections that you wanted to share with the large group. I also have a microphone. I'm going to walk around. If you could wait to share into the microphone so that we can get it on the live stream. This is also a chance if you have any questions for Sister Leanne. Any reflections, questions? Just raise your hand and I'll bring you the mic.
Well, I was just moaning that I moved from a home with a half-acre yard into a condo, and I had to give up my solar panels on my roof and my rain barrel and my outdoor clothesline. And now I have the mowing my lawn and putting pesticide in my lawn, and you just feel so powerless. And I look at all these plants that I can't put in. It's just heartbreaking. Well, I'm going to think about the pesticides. I'm going to go to the meeting and bring that up.
Can I just comment on what you said? I just had this funny idea. Is what if in a condo complex, there'd be some way to buy a condo and turn it into a greenhouse for everybody to use? Just, I know, magical thinking, but
I'm not hearing it.
Well, we didn't talk about this, but this is on my mind all the time. Because our religious tradition says we are made in the image and likeness of God, and so everyone thinks God is kind of like a human and begin to think of those attributes, and the result is that nobody looks at a stone and says, this stone is made in the image and likeness of God. This tree is made in the image and likeness of God. Saturn and its moons and rings is made in the image and likeness of God. So I think our own religious traditions and our language have kind of limited that broader perception of God's indwelling in all of these areas. And as a scientist myself who taught botany and microbiology for many years, I have been on this kick for a while in our parish, which is, given that timeline, do you think God was waiting around to be present all those years till humans came on the scene. What was God doing the rest of the time of those billions of years? God was the God of that time. That was God's spirit in those times. And we limit ourselves so much to using anthropomorphic concepts for God. And so I think that prevents us from doing the things that we're supposed to do in this context.
It's a good insight.
Any questions?
Thank you, Sister Leanne. I was in the Zoom group. The people watching on live stream got together to talk, and everyone in that group was both positively overwhelmed by the information, but eager to get started. So the couple questions that group generated, one was, can you share your volunteer dates with us? That could be probably a quick yes.
Yes.
And then if you want to share them with me, I'll share them with our community.
First Saturday of the month in general, Tuesday mornings, and if we've got a group that wants to volunteer, Michelle will come up with a project.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the maybe a little bit bigger question was, how do you do the partnerships to make something on that scale happen? What do the collaborations look like? How do you get it off the ground and going?
Partnerships for anything?
For a center of that scope.
Yeah, I was curious about that too, because you said you have volunteers collect seeds and
Uh-huh.
different, that's got to be a lot of work. That's got to be a lot of different organized.
It's a lot of organized group, yeah.
How do you, like you said, how do you coordinate?
Well, we have Michelle Banker is amazing. She grew up on a dairy farm, Mercer County. She's got a wonderful work ethic, wonderful knowledge. And over time, it's seed collection happens in the fall, planting happens in the winter. So we have a volunteer group that comes out every Tuesday. We have a volunteer to do the land work. We have a group that does butterfly monitoring all summer every Thursday, or if it's raining, they'll come out on a Wednesday or Friday, around. And then we have first Saturday of the month. And then we work with middle school to adults. We don't tend to do the real little kids, because there's plenty of nature centers that do that, but middle schools to high school, that kind of engagement, they love the hands-on. So we can get them, doing some of that kind of work too. But yes, the seeds are collected, they're stored, planted, propagated. People bring seeds, people who we know their plants, in terms of that too. So it's grown over time. I think people just, our name is Marion Meek, so it's happy are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, meek with the sea. Though we say it's officially Marionist Environmental Education Center, it's really Marionist Environmental Education Community, in terms of how that works. And really, your response is, we have to see all the plants and the animals and the stones as part of our community. That's the expanded concept, that our community includes the mold in our cheese, I say to students, in our fridge, and includes the, creepy crawlies in our house, and that's all our community, as well as what's outside. Yeah.
Are you guys going to be hosting a native plant symposium again this year? Oh, sorry. Are you going to be doing the native plant class?
Yes, so the Midwest Native Plant Society, and you do have a Native Plant Society of Cincinnati too, which is very good. For, I think it's now the 13th year, has chosen Mount St. John because they can walk out the door of a conference and see everything on display. They do early morning walks to night moth watching. So there is a 3-day native plant conference, but it fills up within 24 hours or 36 hours, so you got to register really quickly. But that's why we're doing many more programs, the online programs and other educational programs, so that people can catch particular aspects, because we want to share the how-tos that we've learned over time, and invite others who have expertise to share that with us too.
We have time for one more if there's a final question or comment. Yeah, so we like to ask our presenters to just share what in your work or in what you study gives you hope. A lot of times people become really discouraged in all of the statistics and news headlines. So where do you find hope?
Well, hopefully I gave you some examples in the talk.
I was going to say, I feel very hopeful after your talk.
Yeah, I mean, the quote of Pope Francis, we don't have to do everything, but everybody can do something. You know, that's the thing. And just think, if everybody does something in the right direction, it gives me energy and hope to do more too. I mean, you coming out tonight, you inviting me to give a talk, so I had to do a lot of work to get ready, in a good way, because I never give the same talk. I mean, I'm reorienting the slides and thinking about this audience and where we are, which refreshes me. But seeing the energy of others engaging and supporting this next generation, so this is really important. They're going to be at the conference. We need to, because I hear from them that they're the ones dealing with a lot of despair and hopelessness in their generation, and the amount of depression and all, because they feel like we've got a ruined world. Well, we can't let that happen. We've got to do our parts with the energy we've got remaining, those of us who are getting more and more gray hair, we're covering it, but just that whole, to do our part, and then to really work intergenerationally to see what we can do. So that gives me a lot of hope too, to see the movement happening. And the conference registration went from 75 to 130, so it's 130 are now registered, which is really good, from lots of different sectors, and registration closed on Friday, and we know there's going to, Wednesday, just to get the food order so we're not wasting. But it's looking like, at first we were like, who's going to come to this? But people are coming and signing up, so please do. Because there's going to be a great exchange. We're not seeing this as a talking head expert conference. There will be some experts talking, but it's primarily to network, meet other people, and so that we can keep networking and supporting each other as we do initiatives in our communities and really grow with this. And I think it's a very hopeful thing. There's a lot of discouragement with the families of parishes in some places, but how do we start new projects and new initiatives and really show the church in action, our love, our knowledge, our service? That's what we're about.
Well, thank you so much. If everyone could join me in thanking Sister Leanne. So just a couple quick announcements. The Embracing God's Creation series is going to continue with another presentation a month from today back here in the chapel. On Monday, March 20th at 7 p.m., we'll be hosting Water is Sacred, a panel presentation about our watershed, science, and spirituality. We also hope that you'll join us at the Jesuits Spiritual Center in Milford on Earth Day, April 20th, for a half-day culminating retreat of our series. There's also, the dates are on your half sheet with the reflection questions. We also have an immersion opportunity. All of these are in the RSVP that you would have used for tonight's event also. A recording of the presentation will be available on Bellarmine Chapel's YouTube. The slides are there also. You can go back, look at all the wonderful resources. Sister Leanne has a sign-up sheet going around for those of you in the chapel to get more information about the MEEC. She also has her catalogs here for the plant sale. We have some refreshments in the back from the local Davis Cookie Company. We invite you to stay, continue the conversation if you'd like, and enjoy some refreshments. So thank you all again.